Hey everyone, welcome to the video. Let's go over the 5-game NBA slate for today on Draftkings. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. Getting close to 3,500 subs, so that's pretty darn cool. And you can also follow me on Twitter, which I'm close to 500 followers on Twitter. I know it's not a lot, but I think we can get there pretty soon. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at ChrisPennell16. You can follow me on Instagram at CPen16. And if you want access to any of the extra content that I produce every single night, I put a lot of work into this. So if you do want to support me on Patreon, it's much appreciated. But you get access to my entire NBA spreadsheet, my projections that update all the way up until lock, my data sheet, my DVP chart, my cheat sheet, my core plays, my Discord chat where you can ask me all the questions you want all day. Links in the description below. Also, NASCAR is starting this weekend, so if you do want to sign up for NASCAR, like I've been saying, it's my favorite sport. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be doing weekly articles for that, projections, my data sheet, Discord, all that good stuff. Links in the description below for my Patreon. Without further ado, let's get into today's slate. So it's a pretty interesting slate. I think it's actually pretty solid for a small gamer, but I am looking forward to it. So up top, you have James Harden at 12,400. It's as simple as this. If Westbrook's out, I like James Harden. I don't like the price tag, though. But if Westbrook's in, we can avoid James Harden at that price tag. That's just a little bit too much. But if you take Westbrook off the court, the guy's averaging nearly 2 points per minute. I think it's at 1.98 points per minute. He's got a 50% usage rate. He's the man. I mean, he's already the man, but when Westbrook's off the court, the ball's in his hands, and he's usually doing some pretty good things with it. So you'd have to have interest. And it is a tough matchup versus the Lakers, but I will say they do struggle versus guards. So if we head over to the DVP chart, the Lakers, I believe, are all the way down here at number 3. So as you can see, they're very good defensively, especially versus big men. You know, they got the tall trees and McGee, Dwight Howard, Anthony Davis. Very good defensively versus big men. But they're a little soft versus guards. I'm not saying they're bad. As you can see, they're 12th versus shooting guards, but they do rank 18th versus point guards. So a little soft versus guards. So if Russell Westbrook is out, we could certainly look James Harden's way. Now, I will say, I don't think he's going to be as high owned as you'd think he'd be if Westbrook's out, just because LeBron's 2,000 cheaper in the same game, and he's got similar upside. I mean, he's not going to probably go for 80 like James Harden could, but I think he might go a little bit lower on than you'd think, just because we don't have many free plays like we did the last time out. But he's fine, and like I said, his numbers are absolutely insane. If he gets close to 40 minutes, you can pretty much project him for close to 80 fantasy points. But again, this price tag is pretty concerning unless we get some extra value that opens up. But I could totally understand wanting to go down to a guy like LeBron or Anthony Davis. So, speaking about LeBron, absolutely love him in this spot. I believe he hit 5 straight threes last game, and he had a really good fantasy day. He left Anthony Davis in the dust, which sucked because I like Anthony Davis quite a bit at his cheap price tag. Ended up being LeBron night, but you got to have interest here at 10,400. Definitely want exposure to this game. It's the late night hammer. As you can see, this game starts at 10:30, and on small slates, if I don't have exposure to the late game, I feel like I lost already. I could put up 350 points, and I'll still feel like I lose, just because you have a bunch of expensive players coming up in this late game. You got James Harden, LeBron, potentially Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis. I mean, it's just a loaded game. Lots of good plays, lots of good secondary plays as well. But got to have interest in LeBron here. A big pace-up spot for the Lakers, 15th in pace-up play, while Houston is 3rd, so I definitely like that. And LeBron on the season, 1.54 points per minute with a 31% usage rate. And like I said, if Westbrook's in, I mean, it's just much easier to drop down to LeBron because, I mean, LeBron's only averaging 0.8 points per minute difference. It's a 0.8%, not percent. You guys know what I'm saying. 0.8 less than James Harden. And, I don't think it's worth paying an extra $2,000 for James Harden if Westbrook's on the court. And I love the spot for LeBron. We know Houston's one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. I believe they rank 5th worst, and they rank 22nd versus point guards, 24th versus small forwards. Whatever you want to call LeBron, he plays pretty much every position, and he can usually do whatever he wants on the court. So he's matchup proof, but it's always nice when you get a good matchup. So you can certainly look LeBron's way. The guy's been an absolute beast all season and all of his career. So there's nothing bad I can say about LeBron. Going down to Russell Westbrook here. So as you can see, I have him projected in, which it sounds like he may be trending towards in. He's still listed as questionable, but we'll see. But if he's good to go, I'd much rather play Westbrook over James Harden because you're saving over $2,000 in salary. And Westbrook's been pretty much better than James Harden recently. Now, I know Harden's went off the past couple games, but just in general, like the past, at least the last 10 games, Westbrook's been much more consistent. He's also a lot cheaper. And, I mean, if you're going to give me a $2,200 discount, give me Russell Westbrook here. And like I said, The Lakers, they do struggle quite a bit versus guards relative to the rest of their defense. As you can see, very good versus big men. Then you get a nice shade of green here at 18th versus point guard. So this would be a pretty decent spot here for Russell Westbrook. And on the season, he's at 1.39 points per minute. Got a 33% usage rate. And, decent spot versus the Lakers. Like I said, they're okay versus guards, but not like elite as they are versus big men. So we can certainly look Russell Westbrook's way, and if he's good to go, I'd much rather play Westbrook over James Harden. But I will say I'd rather play LeBron over Russell Westbrook if it comes down to those guys. But going right below me, we have Anthony Davis, who's my favorite spend up of the slate. I know he sucked in the last game, but 9,700 versus Houston, sign me up. And the big thing here is that they traded Clint Capella, so their starting center now is PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker is not going to be able to guard Anthony Davis down low. It's just not going to happen unless they make a trade like tonight or in the morning. But either way, the guy wouldn't play. So it's a lock that PJ Tucker is going to attempt to guard Anthony Davis for the majority of this game. And I don't see it ending well because Anthony Davis is obviously a much taller human being than PJ Tucker is and a much more dominant player than PJ Tucker is. So Anthony Davis should be able to smash in this matchup. I don't see how PJ Tucker is going to stop him. Now, if we head over to the DVP chart, like I said, Houston's a very bad defensive team, but all season, Capella's been kind of anchoring the low down there defensively. They rank 14th versus centers, but if you're going to move PJ Tucker to center, that number is going to dip. As you can see, they rank 28th versus power forwards, which is what technically Anthony Davis is listed as. But either way, they don't have anyone that can guard Anthony Davis down low, especially with no Capella anymore. So I think Anthony Davis just absolutely smashes. I think we can get one of those 70-point games. That might be a little bit aggressive, but I really love the upside. I really like the upside here versus Houston. Now, I will say I think he's going to be very, very high owned. He should be by far the highest owned stud on this slate because he's also affordable below 10K. I mean, if he was 10,500, I'd still want to play him. He'd probably be my favorite spend up still against this very bad Houston defense, especially down low now. But yeah, got to have interest in AD. On the season, 1.44 points per minute, 29% usage rate. And like I always say, if Anthony Davis is below 10K, I automatically have interest, and it always helps when it's a really good matchup. So AD, I think I'm going to make him the cover picture on this video, so certainly have interest. Joel Embiid, he comes in at 9,100. The only reason I have him listed here is just because of the price tag. And last time he played Milwaukee, he actually did have a pretty decent game. I think he had 51 or 54 points. Not the only reason I like him. I don't just base guys I like off of game logs, but always nice when you perform well in the last time you played him. Now, he's not going to play huge minutes, only got him projected for about 31, 32, and I guess a blowout could be a little bit concerning as they're 9-point underdogs, but that's really nothing too concerning. Usually when you see Milwaukee, they're like 15-point favorites, so 9-point underdogs is not too bad for Philly, but they do have 109 implied team total, which I believe will be the lowest on the slate. Or no, I forgot that Orlando, New York's on the slate. I don't have anyone from that game listed, so I kind of forgot, but that would probably be the third lowest after those two guys. So, yeah, that's a gross game. I really don't have much interest in that game. As you see, I have no one listed there. I think there's much better games on the slate. So, but yeah, Joel Embiid, it's a pace-up spot versus Milwaukee, but it's a really tough defensive spot. But as you can see, Philly is 19th to pace of play, and Milwaukee is first. So I always like getting guys in pace-up spots. On the season, he's at nearly 1.5 points per minute. Problem is, he only averages 30 minutes per game, but still good on a point-per-minute basis. 31.6% usage rate. If we head over to the DVP chart, Milwaukee, like I said, one of the better defensive teams in the NBA. They rank, I believe, top 12, if I'm reading that correctly. But they do rank 15th versus centers, so basically middle of the pack. And we've seen some centers have some decent games versus Milwaukee this season. So I certainly think you can look Embiid's way in all formats because 9,100 is really not that bad. And if you can't afford guys like Harden or LeBron or Westbrook, you could go double stud at center with AD and Embiid. I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. Not sure if I'd personally go there, but he's fine. I'd rather get exposure to the guys, the first four, though. I will say that because they're in much better game environments. But Zach LaVine, love the spot here versus New Orleans. I mean, I haven't really played LaVine much this season. The one time I liked him, I believe it was versus Cleveland, and he ended up getting like 80 fantasy points. So 1-for-1 on mentioning LaVine this season, so maybe we can go 2-for-2. Like the spot here versus New Orleans. He really hasn't had many blow-up games since then. But, I mean, New Orleans is just such an elite matchup, and it should be a pretty decent game environment. The Chicago Bulls are 16th in pace of play, but they're getting a nice pace of spot versus New Orleans, who are second in pace of play. He's going to play all the minutes he can handle on the season. He's got a 31% usage rate, 1.18 points per minute. Now, if we head over to the DVP chart, New Orleans just struggles defensively. They're ranked 16th versus shooting guards, 29th versus point guards, 20th versus small forwards. So either way, this is a really good matchup for Zach LaVine. I think you can look his way in all formats. I really don't consider him too much of a cash game play, but I mean, a matchup versus New Orleans, I mean, kind of makes up for it, so you can certainly look his way. Hassan Whiteside, he seems a little cheap here at 8K. Now, I know he absolutely had a terrible game, and I will say I did not watch that game, so I'm not totally sure why. I think he had 5 fouls, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like he probably got into foul trouble. I don't remember the final score of that game. I don't know. It might have got out of hand, but he had 5 fouls, and I think he finished the game with like 8 real points, and I don't remember the rebounds, but he did not have a good game, and neither did Carmelo, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but I like him to bounce back here. He's only 8K. So San Antonio, I usually like to target guards versus them, but Hassan Whiteside, he's just been great on a point per minute basis this season. He's going to play mid-30s minutes. He's going to grade out as a pretty decent point per dollar option in projections. So I listed him on here. I mean, he's fine if you want to. And there's just a lot of good centers on this slate. You got AD, Joel Embiid, Hassan Whiteside, and a couple of other cheap options, which we'll talk about. So I'm not sure how you can't play all of these guys. I mean, I'm sure about that. You can't play all of them, but it's going to be tough to decide who you go with. I think you lock in AD, but AD is eligible at power forward, so I forgot about that. So I guess you could technically go AD at power forward. Maybe you throw in a guy like Embiid if you really want to go with Embiid at that cheap price point. Maybe throw in a guy like Hassan Whiteside, and you just get a lot of big guys in your lineup. It's just the way to go. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but it's possible. But yeah, Hassan Whiteside, I mean, on the season, he's at 1.34 points per minute, which is excellent. And he's got a 19% usage rate, which I don't care about too much about, but he's going to rack up the blocks on most nights. So he's got, 5 block upside every single night, which are worth 2 points each. He should be able to get a double-double here. So Hassan Whiteside, don't mind him. If you head over to the DVP chart, like I said, San Antonio they really struggle versus guards. They rank 22nd versus point guards, 20th versus shooting guards. All the way to centers, though, they're ranking 9th, so it's really not that great of a matchup for Hassan Whiteside, but the guy's pretty much matchup proof. We've seen him have really good games and tough matchups all season, so certainly look Whiteside's way. DeMar DeRozan, he's pretty much been a model of consistency for the past month. I mean, he's just pretty much put up good game after good game. Now, he was really putting up good games when LaMarcus Aldridge is missing, but still, he's been great. And, he's going to play about 35 minutes here. It's a good matchup versus Portland, and not really a pace-up spot. They're both 12th in pace of play, so 12th in pace of play is not too bad. Kind of like a middle-of-the-road, above-average pace game, which is not too bad. And if you head over to his numbers, he's at 1.15 points per minute, 27% usage rate. If we head over to the DVP chart, Portland will grade out as one of the worst defenses in the NBA. They rank, I believe, 6th worst, right behind Houston. And they rank 15th versus shooting guards, 17th versus small forwards. Not like an elite matchup just for him individually, but Portland's a pretty bad defense overall. So I think DeMar DeRozan's fine. Should be able to get you about 40 fantasy points, if not more. Zion, so he was originally listed as questionable, but now he's listed as available to play, so we can only assume he is going to play. And he hasn't really had blow-up games or anything, and they did raise his price to $7,700, but as a power forward / center, he gets an elite matchup versus Chicago, which if you guys have been playing NBA DFS this season, you know that you target big men versus Chicago, and Zion's not just your ordinary big man. He's an athletic freak and can do pretty much whatever he wants on the court, so I think he should be able to smash here. Now, 7,700 is a bit much, but I still think he's a really good option. If we head over to the DVP chart, I mean, Chicago's just so bad versus big men. As you can see, the dark shades of green here. 30th versus power forwards, 29th versus centers. He should be able to eat while he's on the court. And he's been pretty good on a point per minute basis. He's not going to play like mid-30s minutes, but I got him projected for about 30 here. He's touched 30 minutes in one game at least. I don't remember how many minutes he got exactly in the last game. But he should get around 30 minutes here, give or take. And on the season, he's at 1.24 points per minute with a 29% usage rate. So you got to have interest in Zion here. I know he's 7,700, but 30 minutes at 1.24 points per minute, give or take. I mean, I think he can get 40 fantasy points, especially in an elite matchup versus Chicago. Brandon Ingram, pretty much the same price here, kind of the same play, although I feel safer with Brandon Ingram. I think I think Williams got some upside, but Ingram might be the more safe play here. He was last time out versus Milwaukee, and Brandon Ingram ended up having a really good game. He's going to play more minutes as well, and it's just an elite matchup for him as a forward. Like I said, Chicago is just so bad versus forwards. 14th versus small forwards, 30th versus power forwards. While when Ingram's on the court, which is a majority of the time, he should play pretty well. And he's had 2 really good games in a row, but I think he had 48 points the past 2 games. And he's just a really, really good player. He's definitely improved from last season. It's really fun to watch Brandon Ingram. But they play fast, so they're going to look to push the pace here. And on the season, he's at 1.24 points per minute, which is the exact same as Zion, and 28.6% usage rate, which is pretty much the exact same as Zion. But Ingram's going to play more minutes, so it probably makes sense to want to go with Ingram over Zion, but I think they're both fine options. And if you can fit both in your lineup, I think that's fine. So Brandon Ingram, certainly like him. LaMarcus Aldridge just a little bit too cheap here, and I guess you could call it a revenge game versus Portland. I mean, that was a while ago, but I guess you could call it that. But, good spot versus Portland. I know we sucked in the last game versus LA. He went off in the previous game. I don't remember who it was against. Yeah, I don't remember. I think it was versus a soft defensive team, if I remember. I don't remember, but yeah, he sucked in the last game versus LA, one of the toughest matchups you can ask for as a big, but he gets an elite spot versus Portland. They rank 26 versus centers, 26 versus power forwards. So he should be able to have a pretty good game here, and he's just too cheap at 6,500. He's a 7K kind of player. Now, I know he's been struggling a little bit with 20-point games, but he's pretty much a 7K player. 6,500 is just a bit too cheap. And on the season, 1.1 points per minute, 22% usage rate. I think he's a pretty fine, solid mid-range play. Melo. So if you look at his game log, I obviously don't have game logs to pull up, but I believe he only scored 4 or 8 fantasy points in the last game. It was terrible. I think he scored 4 real points, and I think that's just about it. I think that's pretty much all he did. I think he had a rebound and an assist, but he did nothing. Pretty much the nut low for Melo. Now he's 5,700. Pretty good matchup versus San Antonio. Kind of just talked about that when that was LaMarcus Aldridge, and they're on the same team. So if we look over to the matchup against San Antonio, they rank pretty solid versus power forwards. I can't even find them. Yeah, 17th versus power forwards, which I guess it's not great. I mean, it's below average, so it's an above average matchup for Melo, and they do rank 21st versus small forwards. So it's an okay matchup for Melo. I think he's going to be fine. I don't like how bad he was in the last game, and he really hasn't been putting up many good games recently, but he's fine. He's about 0.9 points per minute on the season. Yeah, 0.88 points per minute, 22% usage rate, 5,700. Decent matchup versus San Antonio. You can look his way. I mean, if you have 5,700 left in your lineup and you got a forward and you need to put Melo in, I think you could do worse. So Melo's fine. Thaddeus Young at 5,500, just getting exposure to Chicago in this elite game environment for them. It's a big pace-up spot. New Orleans is second in pace of play on the season, 0.89 points per minute. But, with Markkanen out, you can bump that up a little bit. And he's been playing pretty well. He's been a safe bet for like 25-plus points most nights. 22% usage, or 19% usage rate, my bad. But good matchup versus New Orleans, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. They rank 23rd versus power forwards, 22nd versus centers. I think he's fine. I think he could probably crack close to 30 points, if not more. Going to play about 31 minutes, 32 minutes, whatever. Eric Gordon. So he's only in play if Russell Westbrook misses. If Westbrook misses, I'm not playing Eric Gordon, but he should still get about 30 minutes, if not. But obviously his usage rate goes way down, and his points per minute rate goes way down if Westbrook's on the court, because obviously he's a big ball hog, and Eric Gordon's a bit of a ball hog as well. So obviously he's going to be the second fiddle to Russell Westbrook, or I guess third, considering James Harden. But yeah, Eric Gordon only in play for me if Russell Westbrook happens to miss. I know he had a pretty rough game last time out, but I'll never forget that one night. I did not play him. I mentioned him on the video. I didn't play him, though, versus Utah. Scored like 80 fantasy points. Obviously, that's not going to happen again because Harden was out. I think Capella was out, and Westbrook was out. But yeah, if Westbrook's out, he's fine. Going to get over 30 minutes. So you can look his way. Murray, 5,100, so he's always a hit-or-miss guy. Minutes are always going to be sporadic. He's very up or down. He's not a consistent player, so pretty much only in play for me in GPPs. I mean, you could get there in cash games. I think you could do worse because he's good on a point-per-minute basis, but I'd rather play favors at the same price. But yeah, Murray's fine. On the season, 1.07 points per minute, 20% usage rate. Now, he's only averaging 24 minutes per game, which is rough. Got him for about 26 minutes here. But really good spot versus Portland as a guard. They rank 26 versus point guard, so it's a really good spot for him. Damian Lillard is one of the worst defenders in the NBA, so I think he's fine. If you just have 5K left, you can throw him in. Derek Favors, he comes in exactly at 5K. He sucked in the last game. I played him. He got 10 quick fantasy points, and then he ended the game with 10 fantasy points or 12 fantasy points. I don't know what happened. He just did absolutely nothing when he came back in the second quarter. Didn't do anything in the second quarter. Third quarter did nothing. Fourth quarter got like 2 rebounds, and that was it. He did absolutely nothing. I don't know what happened, but I'll forgive him. He should get over about 25-ish minutes here, and like I said, it's a lead spot versus Chicago. They rank dead last versus centers and power forwards, or I guess second dead last versus centers, 30th versus power forwards. And he's pretty good on a point per minute basis. If he gets about 25 minutes, he's at 1.12 points per minute. You should probably assume he's going to get about 25 to 30 fantasy points, given the case. If that's the case, I should say. A low usage rate, but, wouldn't expect Favors to have a high usage rate at all. So, Favors, he's fine. Kyle Kuzma, I just put him on here because he played really well in the last game. And like I said, Houston is missing some length down low. They do not, or big body, I should say. So, forwards, power forwards, whatever, they should have a pretty good game versus Houston here. He balled out in the last game. Now, he's not a safe play by any means because he was a lot cheaper back then, but you could look his way in GPPs. Can't imagine a lot of people play him. If you play Kuzma, I'd probably not play Anthony Davis because you're kind of hoping the Lakers get out to a lead and then Kuzma comes in and gets some extra run. But you can look his way. On the season, he's at 0.87 points per minute, 23% usage rate, but he's got upside. He'll shoot the ball. He's not afraid to shoot the ball, so you can look his way. But not one of my favorite plays in the slate, but there really wasn't a lot of people to talk about in this slate because it's only a five gamers, so I threw him in just to have some more people to talk about. Dwight Howard, he's not going to see many minutes, but again, I just want exposure to big men versus Houston right now until they get another piece because they have, PJ Tucker and Hartenstein might get a couple minutes, and they just don't have anyone that can defend these guys down low. Dwight Howard's been playing pretty well recently. He's probably only going to get about 20 minutes if we're lucky, but 1.07 points per minute on the season, 14% usage rate. I don't really care about the usage rate, but like I said, big men are going to smash versus Houston until they fix this problem. So you can look his way at 4,800. Not a cash game guy, but you could look his way in tournaments if he happens to get a hot hand. Maybe he'll play some extra minutes. Ben McLemore only in play if Russell Westbrook happens to miss. If Westbrook misses, obviously all of his numbers go up. I only got him played for 21 minutes here, but he'd probably get close to about 30 if Westbrook happens to be out. Not great on a point per minute basis, 0.71 points per minute, but obviously that goes up with Westbrook out, so we can look his way. And like I said, guards have been having some success versus the Lakers this season, so he's got 3-point upside too. So there's games where he gets hot from three, so you could look his way. Austin Rivers, same thing. He'd actually probably be my preferred play if Russell Westbrook happens to miss because he's actually reasonably priced at 4,200. And like I said, guards have been having success versus the Lakers. He's cheap. He'd get about 30 minutes and on the season. Not good on a point per minute basis, 0.69 points per minute. But if you take Westbrook off the court, that goes all the way up to 0.78. So obviously he'd get a bump with Westbrook off. And a couple of these guys, these are pretty much just dart throws, but they're cheap going against New Orleans as guards. So Luke Cornett, or guard, small forward, whatever you want to call him. Or I'm sorry, not guard, power forward. But it's a good spot versus New Orleans. They rank 23rd versus power forward. Yeah, 23rd, 22nd. So pretty good matchup for Luke Cornett on the season. He's only at 0.81 points per minute, which isn't great, but he's also 3,900. Should get about 25 minutes. So we've seen a couple of upside games from him so far, so he's fine. And same with Kobe White, got him close to 30 minutes. Now he is not very good on a point per minute basis, only 0.85 points per minute. I mean, it's okay for a guy that's 3,900 or 3,800, but he's not very consistent. But the guy does have 3-point upside. He's got a 23% usage rate. You can look his way. Big pace up spot versus New Orleans, which probably suits a guy like him well if he can get hot from deep. Should be able to pay off his 3,800 price tag. So not a lot of great value plays on this slate, so that's why I kind of brought those guys up, just because they get good spots versus New Orleans, and it's a nice pace up spot as well. And New Orleans is just so bad versus guards. As you can see, they rank 29th versus point guards and 16th versus shooting guards. So pretty good matchup for Kobe White, so we could look his way. That's pretty much going to be it for the player-by-player breakdown. Before we get out of here, got to talk about the sponsor, Overlay DFS. Alright, so if you've been watching my videos, you already know what this is, but if you're new to the channel, this is OverlayDFS.com. They're kind enough to sponsor this video. If it's a more casual-based fantasy DFS website, and I really do enjoy it. I would not recommend it to you guys if I didn't play it myself. And it's as easy as I'm about to make it sound. You just pick whoever you think is going to score the most fantasy points. I just realized my camera's a little messed up. So if you thought the other night, this is a couple nights ago, James Harden was going to outscore Giannis, you pick James Harden. If you thought Zion was going to outscore Drew Holiday, you picked Zion. If you thought Favors was going to outscore Brook Lopez, you picked Favors. It's as simple as that. It's a pick-em-based website. You don't have to worry about any sharks here. There can be guys like Chipotle or EM2. You don't have to worry about that. There's no salary cap restrictions on building lineups. It's just as easy as it sounds. You pick whoever you think is going to score the most points, and if they happen to score more points, you win that matchup. And if you finish in the top 10% of the contest, you win 9 extra money. So, for example, this is the $22 double deuce contest. If you happen to finish in the top 10%, you win $180. And also, if you go 12-0 in your picks, you can win a jackpot of near $9,000. When I first started playing on Overlay and they reached out to me, the jackpot was around 4K. It's getting all the way up to 9K, so eventually someone's going to be hitting it soon. It's due to be hit, so why not you? So check it out, overlaydfs.com. And if they're also running a slump buster challenge where if you happen to lose 20 days in a row, I'm not talking about like consecutive days. So say you play once a week for 20 weeks in a row and you lose every single day, they will refund every single dollar that you deposited. So check it out. They're basically daring you guys to lose. And yeah, check it out. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. Hope it was helpful. If it was, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really appreciate it. You also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. I don't know, my camera's falling. And if you want access to all my extra content, links in the description below for my Patreon. NASCAR is coming out soon, so sign up for that. I'd recommend it. I'm very excited for that. I'm going to be putting a lot of time and effort on NASCAR, so check it out. Articles as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Enjoy your Thursday. I got to get some sleep.